if that. Okay? So you guys are already lost, right? So whatever I say now.
That's 50%, right?
That's 50%.
You're wasting your time, though. Keep going.
So I'm going to try, as I said, to tell you the entire history of Jerusalem in 5 minutes. And this way we'll have a bit of a, whenever I say 2,000 years ago, you'll know what came before what and when to relate to what part of the history of Jerusalem. Okay? So here I go. Maybe the best place to start the story of Jerusalem is with one of the first stories that were ever told in the Bible about this 90-year-old man. He's living out in Iraq, of where Iraq is today. It's about 55 degrees in the afternoon. He's sitting out in the middle of the sun, and suddenly he hears the voice of God. Try it. Sit outside, 55 degrees, good chance you'll be hearing the voice of God. This guy hears the voice of God, and he says to him, pick up everything you have and walk to the promised land. Well, this guy has no idea who's speaking to him, but he guesses it's God. He takes everything he has, his wife, his cousin, his son, and they walk to the promised land, which he has no idea where he's going to, right? About 6 months later, he hears the voice again. You've reached the promised land. What do I do now? Take your son and sacrifice him to me. This 9-year-old man is just about to sacrifice his son, and right before he does so, a hand of an angel comes out of the sky. Don't do it! I was just trying to test you. And now that I know that you are the righteous one, this land is promised to you and to your kids from this point on. This famous story about Abraham and his son, believe it or not, is actually a founding story not only to Judaism but also to Christianity and Islam. And all religions believe that this story takes place where? Here in Jerusalem. Okay? But maybe the real place to start the story of Jerusalem is not with a tradition, but more with a story that we hear about in the Bible. And this is about a guy named David. He liked the city so much he named it after himself. That's how we get the city of David. He was the first guy to ever build this city. He turns it into his capital, and his son Solomon would build the first temple. If I call this temple the first temple, you will understand that somebody must have destroyed this first temple. It was the Babylonians that arrived in Jerusalem 500 years later, destroyed the city of Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and this small destroyed city would be left a destroyed city for about 65 years. Israelites would come back, rebuild the second temple. And to make everything quicker, we'll say this. The Babylonians lost the battle to the Persians to the Greeks to the Romans. 700 years of history just like that. When the Romans arrived here in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, they tear apart the city and rebuild it. They rebuild the temple, believe it or not, for the Jews. But the sad, ironic part of the whole story is that the Romans themselves, that build up this gigantic city once again as a Jewish city, would be the ones 70 years later to destroy the city completely and destroy the temple again. Israelites and Jews were thrown out of Jerusalem and they wouldn't be allowed back in for about 600 years. 300 years after this city is destroyed by the Romans small city of Jerusalem would be rebuilt, this time as a Christian city. Since the entire Roman Empire converts to Christianity, Jerusalem automatically becomes a Christian city. Churches built up all over the city, but it wouldn't stay a Christian city forever. About 300 years after that, about 1,300 years ago, it's time for our new third religion to come alive, and Jerusalem for the first time in history is conquered and turned into a Muslim city. Mosques built up all over the city, but it wouldn't stay a Muslim city forever. About 1,000 years ago, a bunch of Europeans marched on from Europe, called themselves the Crusaders, recapture the city of Jerusalem, and once again, Jerusalem is a Christian city. It wouldn't stay a Christian city forever. About 110 years after that, the Muslims would fight back once again, reconquer the city of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem would become a Muslim city once again for the next 617 years and a half. Which brings us, if you're still following, to the year of 1914. What happens in 1914? That's right, the First World War breaks out. And by the end of that war, 3 years later, 1917, Jerusalem has become a British city. What are the British doing here? Who knows and who gives a damn? But 30 years, 5 months, and 4 days, the British ruled Jerusalem. And 30 years, 5 months, and 4 days later, the British say something along the lines as, you know what? It doesn't really rain enough for us. There's no Marmite here. We're going back home to London. And the day that the British decide to go back home to London is the day, you'll ask Debbie what Marmite is.
No,
is the day that the 1948 War of Independence breaks out. And if you know exactly where you're standing, just look up. The top of the wall over there, you may notice little pimples, holes in the wall on top of where we're sitting. Take a while to guess what those holes are? Bullet holes, exactly. The 1948 war was actually fought exactly where you're sitting. This is a battlefield in 1948. One of my favorite stories, believe it or not, is this story right over here about the 1948 War of Independence. We're going to get to that a bit later, okay? Jerusalem has been a city that has been fought over for generations. 26 different conquerors have conquered the city throughout its 3,755 years of history. This city has been destroyed over 20 times. It's been rebuilt over 20. one times, obviously. City of Jerusalem has the most magnificent history out of any city in the world, and I've been to a lot of cities, and so have you. And we're going to not only go through this interesting city, we're going to try to connect to our roots here in the city of Jerusalem. Okay? So with that, I would like to invite you in for the second time on our journey here to Israel, to the great old city of Jerusalem, and we'll take a few questions and then we'll continue in.
You know, you're talking about Iraq and Israel and everything, but
Back then it wasn't Iraq.
yeah, it was Mesopotamia, right?
Exactly.
On the wheel.
But Mesopotamia was it like Israel, Iraq, Iran? I don't know.
So it's a good question. I don't have a map. Can you stand like this for a second? No. Yeah. Like this. I put your hands up higher.
Yeah,
Okay.
bend over, yeah.
And this is the map of the ancient world. And this is Egypt down over here. And the Great Nile goes down over here. And then you have the three great rivers, the Mesopotamian rivers, which actually means the land in between the rivers. That's the word Mesopotamia. That's right over here. Can you have another hand come out for three rivers? Okay, three rivers, and this is the land of Mesopotamia, okay? These are the two oldest civilizations in the universe, except for Africa, but that's a different story. Okay, this is where civilizations get started, up here and down here. And what is the small area that connects Mesopotamia and Egypt at the bottom? That's the Holy Land of Israel, right over here, okay? It's a connecting zone. It is a very, very important place that connects the two great kingdoms of Mesopotamia and Egypt at the bottom, okay? And that's why this area becomes such an important dominant area. It's always fought over because it's a connecting land. Egypt is always trying to conquer Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is always trying to conquer Egypt, and pretty much till today that's the situation.
Euphrates? What river is that?
Tigris and Euphrates.
Euphrates?
And the Tigris.
Wow.
What do you say?
You think this?
Yeah, I have plenty of data, for sure.
You think this land will try and be conquered again someday in the future by someone else?
Do I think?
I mean, it sounds like people are fighting over it now.
Battles over Jerusalem have changed in the last 50 years. They've become harder to fight because they're political battles.
At that time, did they speak Sumerian?
What did they say? There are four ancient languages: Akkadian, Sumerian, ancient Arabic, which is a very old language, and there's a fourth language I forgot. And that would become Hebrew. Hebrew would come out of those languages later on. Any other questions? Oh, no.
Sumerians are gold.
Do you believe in that? Okay, guys, if anybody needs to use the bathroom, there will be a 5-minute break now to use the bathroom.